New Bern lives at the juncture of two rivers, a city of voices that speak through the past. We walk its streets and we can hear those voices today. We think of cities in terms of their architecture, but it's the people that make cities come alive. John Lawson, a naturalist and explorer, wrote in 1709 of North Carolina, "A delicious country, being placed at the girdle of the world, which affords wine, oil, fruit, grains, and silk, with other rich commodities, besides a sweet air, moderate climate, and fertile soil." Christoph von Graffenried, a Swiss explorer, hired Lawson to help him locate an ideal place for the settlement of German and Swiss settlers. In the end, it proved to be fatal for Lawson. The party was captured and Lawson was executed. The town was settled, but was under continual attack by Indians. By 1765, New Bern was the colonial capital of North Carolina, with lively trade with New York and overseas. However, as boats became larger, they were no longer able to navigate the riverways. New Bern's railway was a prominent artery connecting the rest of the state and beyond, and further fueled economic growth. It would ultimately figure prominently into the war between the states as a strategic asset. On March 14, 1862, an outmanned and outgunned Confederate force fought a 4-hour battle, and when the smoke cleared, New Bern had fallen, and would remain in Union hands for the rest of the war. W. S. Benjamin wrote in 1865, "In the history of this rebellion, no city has been captured and occupied by our forces, situated as far north as New Bern, North Carolina, has been visited by a sweeping pestilence, so completely decimating as a terrible scourge of yellow fever." New Bern had suffered a yellow fever epidemic in the late 1700s, but almost 100 years later, New Bern was devastated by another epidemic which afflicted both New Bern's residences and the Union troops stationed there. There were 763 cases reported, and 303 people died. In the late part of the 19th century, New Bern had elected its first African American to the House of Representatives. George White, a freed slave, had attended Howard University and received a law degree, and had been successful in his business and law practice before entering politics. He said this at the end of his term in Congress: "This, Mr. Chairman, is perhaps the Negro's temporary farewell to the American Congress. But let me say, Phoenix-like, he will rise up some day and come again." These parting words are on behalf of the outraged, the heartbroken, the bruised, and the bleeding, but God-fearing people, faithful, industrious, loyal people, rising people, full of potential force. After his career in Congress, George White would go on to found a bank and begin work on a township outside of Philadelphia. Mary Barden wrote, "It's hard to imagine the scope of the tragedy that befell the city of New Bern that day in 1922 when the town was ravaged by the worst fire ever to occur in North Carolina. Before the day was over, 3,200 people were homeless, 1,000 buildings were destroyed, and hundreds of jobs were lost, and an area of 40 blocks was totally destroyed. Losses were estimated at $2.5 million, and about a third of this was covered by insurance. The town was just stunned by the magnitude of this disaster." We trace the footsteps of those that came before, and we see the beginnings of something new. So it has always been here in New Bern. There have been calamities, but the town has survived and prospered through it. We hear its voices, we see its faces.